Hey guys, thank you for joining us for another exciting episode of YOMO. This is the Year of Magical Learning podcast. We are on Reflection 234, and this is part two of five reflection from one of our favorite author, Nicolas Taleb, The Antifragile, the things that gain from disorder. And, I think this is one of the, I guess, a little bit more of a harder topic to take in, but, this is why we have this podcast to discuss it.
Yeah, Anti-Fragile is definitely one of my favorite books. It's just one of those books where just like aha after aha after aha. It's like a roller coaster of new ideas just thrown at you in a
But
whirlwind.
I
And
think
it's
I
fun.
think that's the reason why I say it's kind of hard to understand if you pick up the book without the Black Swan references and the randomness, full by random references. It's a bit harder to understand because it's missing the
Right.
rung of those ladders. Even the Black Swan, if somebody doesn't have a foundation to understand Black Swan, you could say the world is going to have this kind of extremity. So why should I do anything? Because I can't even control it. And
Right. Like a kid that goes into philosophy school, whatever, like school and like college for philosophy 101, and he goes back home and he's like spouting off like Nietzsche and all, Rousseau or whatever the hell else he learned, and like
mhm.
talking to his friends, and you're like, it's just what your point is this shit's dangerous if taken without any other context in mind and life backgrounds in mind. Sure, there's some points that are made in there, but like you don't want to be the guy. I'm not going to walk into a party someday and be like, it's all random, man. This meeting's random. None of this matters.
What's the
Oh,
point? What's the
yeah,
point? That's the thing that people will ask because if you don't understand, then one of the obvious thought that comes to mind is if I can't control anything, then what's the point,
right.
right? What's the point of trying? What's the point of any of these things if I have no control over it? And so that's the
Well,
thing. It's pretty dangerous without having the rung of the ladder. And so Anti-Fragile is a book that comes after the Black Swan, right? So you probably need the Black Swan first.
I don't think you need Fooled by Randomness to understand Black Swan. I think you do need Black Swan to understand Anti-Fragile, and I don't think you need any of the books to understand Skin of the Game. I think it's really these two
Well,
books.
no, I don't think it's in the categorizations of the main topic that we discussed
No,
that he tries to elucidate. Skin and
I
Game is
think
his
yeah.
epilogue of I've written all this work. I have something I want to say and I want to get off my chest. So to me, Skin and Game is like a book that more of like, hey, this is what I've learned.
I think it was more of a personal, fun. I think it was like that one was all for him, like,
But even so, but I still think it offers a valuable lessons for us because like it's if I would go, hey Chris, you and I need to get together and we want to be a partner in our business. If you don't have the skin in the game, I don't believe you.
soul in the game. I wouldn't talk to you.
Exactly. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, when we took the skin in the game, we say, well, our lesson from this book is we gotta look for people with soul in the game.
Exactly. Yeah. We want to. Let's not ruin. All right. You ready? Ready to get into?
Well, this
Because I
is
want
not this that's
we got to do the reflection real fast. All right. You ready?
the reflections.
Yeah. All right. So part two is why isn't it sharing? There you go. Part two is simplicity. It takes no skill to understand something, but mastery to write it. Started off this reflection with KISS. The whole acronym for Keep It Simple, Stupid. You've heard of that before, right?
Yeah, I do, but I
Yeah.
don't. I'm not sure about the last S.
Well, that's the joke. Is like just keep it simple, stupid. It is. It's like who was that one guy that was Bill Clinton's advisor, the Raging Cajun? What was his name?
I
I
don't know.
remember. I don't know how do you spell. Oh, it's probably Raging Cajun. What the hell is his name? James Carville, that guy. The Raging Cajun. His whole moniker was it's the economy, stupid. That was like their slogan. It's like just stay on focus on everything. It doesn't matter. Stay focused. It's the economy, stupid. It's like let everything else go. Stay on task. Anyway, but I always remember personally. I've always remembered this statement
Mhm.
and the saying. It's something that's always stuck in my head. But like as I've gone through this journey, the funny thing about a stupid sentence like this, keep it simple, stupid, is while it sounds incredibly simplistic, it probably took whoever first coined this phrase and brought it to the world. It probably took that person 40 years of their life and a whole lot of exploration and learning in order to distill down whatever they had learned into that stupid little KISS, keep it simple, stupid, or like James Carville with it's the economy stupid, or Nassim Taleb, where it's like randomness, or the Black Swan, really, just that saying. You say the words the Black Swan, you and I both know what we mean by it, or anti-fragile. Like these concepts that he's talking about in these books where he's spent, I don't even know how many hours in his life reading and learning and exploring and crafting and diving deeper into it and through his day-to-day practices and works and living that life and the soul in the game kind of thing, right? In order to come away with something so simple as a Black Swan idea, right? The biggest impact, the most impactful events in life are the ones that we least expect, kind of thing, and like it sounds like such a simple phrase, but that's through an insane amount of work that was done over a long period of time. So for me, what Antifragile taught me was a reminder about the simplicity of this journey, right? I mean, it made me start to think about this whole journey that I've personally been on and that you and I have been on together as we've gone through this together via the podcast series. It took me almost an entire year of my life and daily writing to write a 400-page book that I was able to distill down whatever the hell was going on in my head into the phrase living for two. And I still didn't really understand it after I finished writing that book. And then it's taken me another 2+ years to finally refine that thought a little bit more through this whole journey, every day, learning, reading, reflecting, doing, to understand what does that mean to me? How do I practice that every single day? How do I keep Amelia in my actions in forefront and keep her connected to me in my life every single day? What does this mean? When I first, it took me 400 pages to explain that concept to somebody, right? Basically. Now, I could probably write it in 5 pages, 4 pages. Let's say 4 pages. I could probably write it now in like 4 pages of what I mean by it, and it's like my dream is to be able to say it in like 1 sentence, by the time that I leave this earth, because then it'll be so crystal clear to me that I could say to anybody, like, what is this? Like, what does this mean? Like, why do I like, I can't understand everything that nobody can understand everything that I've gone through or that you and I have gone through together. But what they can understand is when we finally can distill this thing down to something that's so simplistic that anybody can understand it, like that's what the quote is. It takes no skill to understand that. It takes no skill to understand. Keep it simple, stupid. It takes no skill to understand what a Black Swan is. It takes no skill to understand, what meaningful work and meaningful relationships mean, right? But it takes mastery to write that and bring it to life and describe it to somebody, and to distill it down into those 3 simplistic, profoundly simple statements of ours. Coming out of this journey is going to be focus on your values. Like, think about everything that I just said to you, focus on your values and the profoundly simple statement that is. And I know what your head's thinking right now. It's going back and it's thinking back through all these conversations we've had and all the things that we've gone through and all the mentoring and all the living and bringing the stuff into your own personal life and my own personal life. And what does it mean for living it for two? And what does it not? All these things, right, can all be distilled down into focus on your values, and you and I both know what that means. And you and I also had to spend 3 years, for the better part of almost 3 years, try to say those words to somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that blows your mind? I mean, remember back when we first said the words clubbing? We were talking to Nickel, and he goes, "I'm hearing it's like a club, but it's also like a company. Like, I don't know, maybe we should call it like clubbing." And we were all like, "Oh, that's it. That is what we mean." And then we spent the next 4 months trying to talk about. No, it's. I mean, God, how many weird ass things that we try to describe this as, and we still don't really fully know, but like at least we're closer and closer to say clubbing is meaningful work and meaningful relationships. I mean, that's probably about as best we can get it right now. I mean, I'm sure we can get a little bit better, but my whole point of this whole reflection was from Antifragile. It's just one of those thoughts that I was like, man, simplicity is so hard. The universe is like simple, right? But that doesn't mean that it's stupid. The universe is incredibly smart, and it's taken the universe millions and billions of years to be able to figure out, like, and distill down its principles into something that just makes sense, right? And it's kind of the same for us too. The more time you spend on something, the more simple it becomes. But that does not mean that it was simple or the concept is simple at all. But anyway, yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts.
Right. I think, it's hard to leverage the existing words and understanding and the meaning behind the words, right? Some of these words are hard to understand and they have multiple meanings. And for somebody to distill a vast amount of information into a simple bumper sticker statement, It's essentially what these are. You look at like Einstein, right? He spent the majority of his career to come up with the E=mc squared.
Right.
But I mean, from that perspective, it's just very, very simple. But you think about a number of years taking him to go from there to that simple formula. That's the final formula that he's able to derive. And all of the things that comes into that formula has been able to satisfy all of the requirements that anyone can come up with and say, hey, what about this situation? What about that situation? What about this scenario or that scenario? Something with, Newton's law of physical mass time acceleration. It's very simple. It's just two variable mass
Right.
times acceleration, right? And that's as simple as I get, but that describes the majority of the problems in physics in reality, right? Based on the physics perspective. It describes most of it. I mean, you're talking about like gravity, you're talking about motion from the horizontal plane, you're talking about vertical, you're talking about centrifugal force, many other things. Same thing with the book, The Compound Effect, right? Compound effect. There's two simple words, but it takes up the whole book to explain to people what it means.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so that's the thing is, even some of the things that we have talked about, like the elephant whisperer, right? Or the elephant and the rider, that is a construct that allows people to understand many things beneath just the construct itself. Because we're talking about the elephant and the rider, it represents a lot of things that we understand without the spoken word. And I think having the ability to pick out something that satisfies all of the requirement all of the issues and problem we encounter to one thing, where that thing is so versatile that's able to fulfills any of the problem we have. So we talk about company, right? What is a club? It's a club and it's a company, but it's not about the work. It's not about the money. It's not about the values, right? The value you do is encompasses meaningful work, is encompasses meaningful relationship. And then we talk about let's expound the meaningful work. Well, what does meaningful work is entail? So it basically say, the work that aligns with my skill set, aligns with the kind of capability that I was born with, and all these things. You know how sometimes when you buy something from like Amazon or whatever, and it comes in a box, and when you take it out, it becomes much bigger than in the box, and then you can't even figure out how to put them back together because the way they organize and put them to the box, right? To me, it reminds me of that. The thing is, it takes creativity and mastery to put the whatever all the parts into a nice simple box in a little tight container. And so to me, having the ability to say a single concept like the elephant and the rider, it encompasses a massive amount of information and squeezed so tightly into one little simple thing that you can take with you. Just like we're talking about like the auto run downhill or green lights, right? We understand what that means. Something with Black Swan is like people say, well, I don't know if I can describe these things, but somehow when we the word Black Swan, we can easily understand the concept of the event that happens, similar to a black swan. That hey, among the natural colors of the swan, they're all white, right? And so understanding, hey, maybe COVID is a black swan event. Well, how do I understand COVID is a black swan event unless I understand how black swan works in a white swan world?
Right.
And having that simple concept give us a lot of images, like videos, and each image is about. If you say, an image is 1,000 words, right? And a video is, thousands of words.
Right.
And so having the ability to distill down requires so much. I wouldn't say training, but so much effort into
just mastery. It's just time thinking, writing, and doing. I mean,
it's mastery of the concept in order to relate that to someone else.
Right.
That to me is require a lot of analysis, a lot of reflection, a lot of understanding it. Because if you don't understand it, right, there's no such thing as mastery. You can spend so much time in it, but you don't understand it. For me, I want to distinguish between just spending time versus Time and understanding. You need time, but also need understanding. Like
Right.
without understanding, even if you have the time, it still doesn't mean much.
You need to figure out how this applies to the real world, like living it. Like, I mean, like it's like you can't just tell somebody what black swans are and then just walk away. It's like, how do you apply that to life? You can't just tell somebody a compound effect. How does that work? How did you live that? What did you discover when you did this? Like, you can't, like we could go back on a million different ways. Almost every one of these books, I mean, hell, basically the Year of Magical Learning, almost every one of these reflections is a distillation down of a particular concept, and then a description as to how, what that made me think
Well,
about.
normal book is 365 or at least about 300.
Right. Exactly.
It's essentially unpacking 300 books.
Pretty much. Yeah, I mean, it's unpacking 300
And then
books.
each book is unpacking like 40, 50 years of somebody else's experience.
Honestly, like, this goes back again to why I love books so much more than any other form of media out there. Like, it's something that takes a long time to create, and then it has to be consumed the way the author wanted you to consume it. Like, you have to sit with it for a really long time, and for both parties, like, both parties have to agree, as the consumer of this, and as and it's not advertised either. You know what I mean? Like, you pay for it and then you can read it when you want or not read it when you want, or listen to it if you want to do an audiobook. But either way, the sheer act of creating a book is the idea of simplicity. I mean, they're taking their entire life and trying to work through their own whatever it is they're trying to work through to be able to craft a story to you that you can understand. And you just don't get that when you watch I mean, I guess movies sometimes can be, but there's just something about books. It's just the most accessible, ancient, kind of thing that we can all spend time, and we can pick up whatever we want to pick up, versus like some algorithm telling us, yeah, I mean, sure, Amazon might, maybe give us some
Well,
recommendations.
I think books is probably the best medium because you think about it, everybody who can speak and write or have an education have a long history of ability to write. And so anyone with any kind of gift or skills can record and
Right.
document the experiences by writing it because it's natural to them. But for somebody to say, well, I am Charles Darwin, I can collect all these things, but how do I put it into a movie? So for a movie, you have very limited sources for good information. And even for books, like the books that I like to read, the thing is every single great book, they usually have like one or two masterpieces. So for example, you look at Charles Darwin, what is his masterpiece? The origin of species,
evolution.
right?
Yeah.
Because when you hear Charles Darwin, what books it comes to mind? So that's his
Right.
life work.
Yeah.
Like the 7 Habits, right? I mean, that's like at least one generation. Well, his life work, but then his son took over after that and wrote the 8 Habit. But I'm saying is it took this guy his lifetime of all the experiences and taking all of the information he got and orchestrated into the simple 7 habits, right? You think about all the things that you do in life. You are distilling into 7 simple steps that you can do, and that is a masterpiece. Because if you say, well, I'm going to look at other books, and if those books are really like, oh, this guy wrote a book once a year, right? Well, he don't have much to say. The guy has 100 books, and if he become famous, it gotta be because of one of 2 books that embrace his entire experience into something that, hey, is useful and valuable for somebody. Because so that's what I'm saying is not all books are created equal. The books that I like to read are basically life experiences from a person with their whole soul in the game.
Right. That's actually why I think I don't like Fooled by Randomness, and I loved Black Swan and Antifragile, because like it was more about his life and how he was applying these concepts, and his soul was in the game. Fooled by Randomness was more of a,
well, the Fooled by Randomness is something that he needs. It's like a preface, right?
Right.
A preface of well, why is Black Swan comes to be? It's because in reality there is randomness, and we are fooled by it. That's why we don't see Black Swan as what it is. So even though he didn't spend his entire life on full body randomness, but he needs to introduce it. There's a concept that he understands in life. And so to me, yes, full body randomness isn't as vividing as the Black Swan or Antifragile. I agree with you on that aspect. It's because because the thing is, I don't think he spent much time on the full body randomness in terms of his
Yeah, it was more like
personal
a
experience
discourse.
accounting for it. He said, well,
Right.
this is how I understood. Basically,
Right.
you think
He was just
about,
explaining an idea. It was a philosophical.
so you look from a remembering self versus a experiencing self, right? So when he wrote the full body randomness, it's basically, this is how I understand the world. I didn't experience this directly, right? But of all the years of things I've seen, this is what I see. This is a seed for what I'm going to describe in the other book, because this is a thing that exists and that
Right.
people don't pay attention to. So that's like the compound effect, right? There's just one phenomenon in life that exists, but
Or we
people
could.
are fooled by it. But I'm going to take it, I'm going to put it into the Black Swan, and I'm going to say, well, because the thing is, I need to more like elucidate in with examples of what I mean by full body randomness in the Black Swan. So Black Swan is like, this is my personal experience of how full body randomness applies to me from the author's perspective, and that's why I think it's Black Swan is more vividing than the introduction book and the epilogue book, and
Yeah.
that's what I call it. The introduction book and the epilogue book. That's the first one and the last one. The
Right.
two, the middle one is where the meat is. But I think it's better if either you have a foundation in how probability works, then Black Swan makes better sense. I mean, it's not like you can't, but it requires a lot of thinking if you just dive directly with our background information. But I think having the full by randomness book helps you understand some of these things better when you read Black Swan. But I'm saying a lot of the great books are usually somebody's experience compacting their knowledge and orchestrating into something that you can follow. Because a lot
Right.
of times you and I, we go into the company experience and we have many things in different places this completely disorganized. But when you and I comes together and say, well, it's about meaningful work, meaningful relationship, right? And then we're talking about focusing your values. Because
Right.
because the thing is that
That's how
doesn't
you. That's
come
how you
in
get.
order. It doesn't
Right.
come in order. We can
Right.
have to distill it into something that say, hey, whatever other thing I tell about, right? It's okay if you don't understand it. All I have to remember is meaningful relationship, meaningful work, and focusing your value. Those are the only two things you need to keep in mind. You need
But
to take
but
away
there's so
from.
many underlying principles behind all of. There's 365 principles that underlie all of that, really, for the most part. I mean, probably more.
Probably more than that.
I mean,
More than 365. Probably going to be
there's
thousands.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like I think back to like some of the, like our imagination is one of our superpowers. Culture is one of our biggest weapons, and how to 90% bee and 10%, or sorry, 90% monkey and 10% bee, and like how do we create a culture that's culture is the strategy, or culture eats strategy for breakfast, and now it's culture is the strategy, and then all these, like, we could write a pre-book about
I would say culture is.
the cake, right? Yeah, like
Because
I mean,
we're talking about eating cake, eating frog, right? And we're talking about culture strategy. I said, well, of all the experiences I've seen, well, I would say culture is cake, right?
I mean,
what do you mean by culture cake?
we're not paying for Slacks, they can't, but become a professor of the jungle, and value driven habits, and conscious living, and don't spank your elephant, and yeah, we need to write a book called How to Train Your Elephant. Is what we need to write a book. As I wrote this down here, I need to keep this to make sure that the stupid free Slack version doesn't keep deleting our shit. Not deleting it, but it's like
it's hiding it. And so once you subscribe, you can access it.
Right. It's remarkable. I mean, hell, we were just kind of talking about this before we were jumping on this conversation. Like the fact that we're on podcast 234, I just finished 360 today of the writing project. We're getting closer and closer to the finish line that is the marathon of Your Magical Learning. And not that it's going to stop, but like this project may stop at that point in time, potentially. I don't know, it probably won't, but I mean, we'll probably still always do, like, because this is our 7th generation committee meeting, which if anybody that just heard that, they're probably like, what the fuck does that mean? And you're like, well, we know exactly what that means. That means we're focused on, 7 generations from now, and making sure that the core values that we and the principles that we started Clubany on are protected and only turned over to people in the future that that understand this and will protect this going forward, because this is all about culture is the strategy, right? Like, this is all about making sure that we are starting a meaningful work and a meaningful relationship driven commerce business with the idea of culture comes first, the ideas can come second. Like, we are not starting this business based off of an idea of a what that we're going to do. We're starting it based off of a why are we all getting together to go do this in the first place, and truly starting with like the culture first and making sure that everybody is going through all that. But anyway, like the point of all this stuff is like it's going to I kind of lost my train of thought, I guess. But anyway, I'm so glad that we're going through all this stuff, and it's hard to believe that we're even where we are, and it's hard to believe what we'll even be going forward in the future. But like, maybe it's a good time to drop the I don't know where we're going, but I know how we'll get there. Talk about keeping it simple, right? Like, that's basically life in a nutshell. Just stay focused on your values, one step at a time.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. We have so many, all the books has immense value, and because of the immense number of effort and number of years it takes to produce one good book, like the Black Swan, Antifragile, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and many other books like Happiness Hypothesis, Sapiens, and all that. I mean, you're talking about, like, even I mentioned those 5, right? That could easily be like 50 years each.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's 50 years each. And you say, well, let's if we take the life work of other people and to use that as way to distill our own, I guess, path and concept of life, you are talking about, kind of like compressing and packing in like thousands of years of experience into one book. And then in those books, there's basically one concept we want to promote, which is essentially culture's cake, or meaningful work, meaningful relationship, or focusing on value. Because like all that, when you unpack it, it basically there's no end to it. You think about it, there's no end. If you keep following the trail,
Oh yeah.
there's no end to it. And so to me, it's like in life, you can say, well, culture's cake, or life is not, it's not destination, it's the journey. Because what's your destination? What's my destination?
I don't know.
People live, people die. The beginning and the end, that's the destination. So it shouldn't be about the destination. Your destination is you're going to return to dust. That's the destination. I mean, without the ability to solve the immortality problem, right? Your destination, my destination, is going to be we return to dust, right? We leave this earth. That's our destination. And so the thing is, everybody has the same destination. So what's the difference between your life and anybody else's life? So it isn't about the destination. It's about the journey. So all of the things that we've learned thus far, I can tell you, life is about the journey.
Right.
Life is about, carrying the spoonful of oil around a majestic palace without losing the, the enjoyment, the blissful emotion of enjoying the beautiful palace. And
100%.
go back to our first book, The Alchemist. And that's essentially that aspect, right? But we basically unravel all these layers. The first book itself is very, very simple because it packs so much thing. Now we have to unravel and think, okay, we understand these details. This detail has another set of details, like the Russian dolls, where you open one doll, there's another doll inside, open that doll, another doll inside. But because in a intangible format, it never ends. It doesn't matter how small it gets, it never ends. Right. And so that's the beauty of having the simplicity. But it takes tremendous mastery to pen down a concept like what Nassim, Nicolas Taleb did, or what
we're doing. Think about how much time we've spent on this. Every one of these reflections. What do you think? How much time do you think went into each one of these reflections?
I would say a couple hours per reflection, plus the podcast. It's like 2 hours, 3 hours. The winter books, probably 9 hours, 6 to 9 hours average.
So like this one thought, this one reflection, let's just say 15 hours, and that's collected between you and my time, and then let's just say that each one of these, I don't know if each one of them took 15 hours. Let's say on average 10 hours. I don't know, collectively
Yeah,
for each
10 hours to make it easy to do
yeah.
math. About because these books, when you look at the book that has any substantial information in them, it's around 6 to 9 hours. I know the habit 7 habits of highly effective people is about 11 hours, but on average, it should be around 9 to 10 hours per book. And most of the books we pick up are pretty much in that range. I mean, there's few books
Yeah,
that
I
are,
mean, there's
but
some that are way longer, some that are way shorter.
on
Averages
average, it
out.
averages out, right?
Yeah.
So the majority of the books are within those range, and there are some outliers but the outliers has a small, I guess, numbers of books that are much, I guess, shorter, and some smaller amount and much
Right.
longer.
Right. No, so I mean, what I was getting at is like for us to do this whole journey, if you added up 365 times, just say 10 hours of collective work, what is that? 3,650 hours?
3,650 hours.
That's 3,650 hours for us to say to the words to you, focus on your values.
And then you take that and say, hey, if somebody wrote a 10-hour book, how many hours would they have to spend to experience it, to deduct it, and to master it? That's like 50 years, right? So
I forgot us
multiply
living our life.
3,650 hours.
But wait, I just totally undershot that massively because we're talking about living our lives too, because we're applying these concepts every single day. So I have no idea how many hours I spent on, on trying to live for two. No idea. Like, no, I couldn't even begin to fathom how many hours that I've done living and trying to make my world make sense through my actions, not just the concepts and the things that we're learning, but put it into action, So like, I don't even know. Actually, now that I just said that I really don't even know. I mean, this could be 10,000 hours for all I know. You know what I mean? That we've put together for this whole entire thing over this whole entire project. Like, I don't even know. So the point is it's a massive amount for you and I to distill this down to this 3 words or meaningful work. You know what I mean? Like, blows your mind sometimes even think about it. But I think simplicity is kind of
Well, I think it's just mastery.
It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. Like, I mean, David is simplistic. Everything that out there in this world you see, it, when you look at an Apple phone or something like that, like it's pretty simplistic. Like you should know what to do with it. It reminds me of the design of everyday things, right? The best designs are the ones that are the easiest, most simple ones, but that simple design took a whole lot of thought and understanding of humanity in order to really design it to make it so simple. Can you think of anything that you do in your life that's complicated that you enjoy?
No, not really.
Like just super complicated.
I mean, the joy is to make it simple. Same thing in coding. I can write. So the thing is, I can take 1,000 line of code and distill it into like 5. Right. So that's
right.
How do you take 1,000 line of code and to distill it into 5 and can handle more scenarios than 1,000 line of codes?
I have no idea.
That's what you call mastery.
Exactly. I'll see your code on a website and I'll go, hey, True, I want my website to look like that. And you're like, well, Chris, it doesn't just work like that, and you're like, no, it's fine. Just make it do this. This person did a great job. Yeah. Well, yeah, they spent, like you're going to say to me, you're an idiot. How does Novak Djokovic do that when you're like,
it's just one.
Right. All I do is move his arm like this.
You did the same thing. Go ahead.
Yeah,
and when you did it, it flies up in the ceiling. And that's what I do is when I play tennis, it always flies. I mean, the thing is, how the tennis court has these like high, really high, super high fences.
Right.
And most of my shots, even the return shots, went out.
I believe it.
I did the same thing.
You got to turn your wrists, if you
I see the same thing that you did. The result is completely different, and it's a mass difference between. It's not.
I can tell you exactly what you're doing. You're hitting. So think of your hand. You're hitting the ball like your hand. The racket looks like your hand, really. So if you're hitting the ball like this, the racket's tilted up like this, and if your racket's tilted up like this, the ball is going to hit and go that way, right? Like when you hit the ball, you actually want your hand like this, because when the ball hits, you want to come over the top of the ball so you can bring it back down. When you're coming through and your hand's like this, it's just going to go that way.
It's even easy for you to explain, but it's very hard to execute.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think
because the thing is, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is take your hand, right, and curve it, right? Hit it on the curve so that you force it to go down.
Right.
What's so difficult about that? Well, I can't do it.
Exactly. Well, and what's so difficult to write about writing 1 and 0, you know, a bunch of different times? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
sure, it's just two numbers. You write a bunch of numbers. I could write 1 and 0, 1 0 1 0 1 0 1 0. I mean, I don't even know if that's code anymore.
What
But
I'm saying is,
yeah.
I can write a book, and I can write like, let's say I can write like 20,000 lines, but doesn't mean that it can be understood by anyone versus a master, a great author, right? That can take the same, I guess, tool set, which is all the other words, all the English word that we have, and put it into the right patterns that elucidate, an image in the reader's mind, right? And so that's the difference between a master and not a master, a
Right.
mastery versus non-mastery. Because you say, well, I know the mechanics, I know the word, I know basically all the word, like, whatever the word that's there in English, I know them.
Mhm.
But doesn't mean that I can put them together and orchestrate into a book that describe a concept like happiness hypothesis or anti-fragile or Black Swan. It's not going to happen. Meaning,
The book that I'm reading right now with my wife that I was telling you about before we started is called The Croissant, you know, one more croissant for the road, where she's doing like the Tour de France with eating a croissant each step of the way and documenting her journey and talking about the food that she ate and wine or whatever and stuff like that, right? As she goes around France and eating croissants and rating croissants and stuff. It's funny because my wife and I, you know, in theory, this sounded like a home run for the two of us, like a home run. We both have been to France multiple times and we both love it. We both love to go back. We love wine. We love French food. And well, she does. I'm gluten free, but she loves croissants, you know, things like that. And I like sports, and I guess cycling's a sport if you're going to do a Tour de France, you know, and we like travel, right? So we were like, huh, this sounds like it's right up our alley, you know. And as we've been like, you know, we're about like, I don't know, a fourth of the way through the book or something like that at this point in time. And we're both kind of like, I don't know what's going on here. And as I started to explain why I loved travel books to my wife, I was like, there's no connection to a why that she's doing this. She's just got on a bike and wanted to eat croissants. And I'm like, that's cool. It sounds fun, but why are we doing this? Why are we on this adventure with you? And why are we going from this place to this place? Or I was like, if you're going to write a travel blog, you either need to go all Brill Bryson and load it up with so much new information of interesting knowledge about the places that you're visiting that I would have never ever been able to figure out. It's like listening to Bill Bryson talk is like listening to an encyclopedia that makes you feel, I don't know, warm and fuzzy. But for some reason, he ties together stuff, just random information, and turns it into this amazing. You just are learning so much. He just makes you learn so much about whatever
it's
you're
just
doing.
it would tie a very boring, live event or concept into something that's interesting. Hey,
Right.
I eat this croissant at this place, or this place has history. Well, I tell you about history of, maybe, one upon a time was supposed to be like, some kind of, a wishing well, or whatever story it is. But this is what mastery comes in. It's like, I know how to elucidate a lot of
Knows how to tell a story. Yeah, he knows how
you
to
know,
tell a story.
it's for versus somebody who said, I can write the text, I can write the sentence
Right.
grammatically correct, right? But it doesn't do anything to me because I don't understand everything.
I'm reading somebody's journal about riding a bike and eating some food, you know, I'm like, that's okay, I guess, but it's not entertaining. I'm not there with you. I don't feel like I'm physically there with her, and I don't know why we're there either. It's just like, and then we did this, and then we went there, and then we did this, and then we got back on our bike, and then I ate a croissant. It was pretty good. Here's a recipe.
If you were to write a book, right? I can say, this is what the story is about. In general, I can tell
Right.
the gist of it, but people don't understand what it is because there's missing details. But
Right.
that's where the book comes in, is able to tell it in a way and give examples that people understand what you say. That's mastery, because you have to understand totality of the subject before you can have a book that can, I guess, engage the readers into the stories.
Right.
And having that skills require a lot of training.
I mean,
And that's the point.
this journey is, in theory, just reading books and talking about what we learned.
So
I
the
mean,
thing is,
it has nothing to do
reading
with that.
books, learning it, and then writing it.
Well, it's more
Because
than
you,
that. It's an
because then
exploration. It's a journey. It's learning about it's exploring our beautiful questions of life, in general.
Right, because you think about it, when we read a book, right? We understand some of it, and then we live it. And then we say, well, based on what I did, this is what I have come to conclude. So
Right.
this is the lesson. That's what I'm saying is what we doing is we are reading a book, we're picking up a concept from the book, and then we try it, and then we get a feedback from the thing that we do. Then
Right.
we go and we put into this reflection, and then we go and we tell people. So that's the telling part, or the
Mhm.
writing down part, the teaching part.
It's what the
That
lessons are. Like
that
yeah.
requires tremendous work and effort to understand from the beginning to where we are now. If you cannot simplify it, meaning you don't understand it enough. I think that's what Einstein said.
I agree. I mean, it's about taking people on a journey with you, and you can't do that unless you really know it and you know what that story is and where you want to take them. I think we're a little over time for the night, but yeah, at the end of the day, keep it simple, stupid. Like there is so much power and simplicity.
Well, I like the simplicity. I'm not sure about the kiss. I think, it's
Yeah.
simple. It's simple, but it's not stupid. It's simple but beautiful.
No, stupid is for you. It's a reminder to tell yourself, hey, stupid, like, not to the other person. It's keep it simple, you idiot, like just keep it simple, you idiot, like it's that's what that
Uh,
means. Like it's not like, hey, keep it simple. You know what I mean? You're telling yourself, like, keep
yeah.
it simple, stupid. Like you're telling yourself,
You're telling your
the
writer.
elephants. Yeah, the writer's telling the elephant you're stupid, it's like keep it simple, elephant, you stupid idiot, but yeah, anyway, the question we can leave with everybody, or do you have any final thoughts before we
I guess,
depart?
keep it simple. Stupid. I always say keep it simple and stupid.
Keep
Uh,
it simple and stupid. No. It's keep it simple, you idiot, comma,
uh,
stupid. Yeah.
okay.
So the question we can leave with everybody is how close are you to being able to describe your why in a simple manner that anyone can understand? Hell, screw the why. How close are you to be able to explain your values to somebody else that in a simple manner that anybody can understand? Like, I mean, I can't even tell you how hard it is for my team to tell me what they care about and why they care about those things. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you all tomorrow night.
Yeah, sounds good.